Fatal Frame: Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is a third-person horror game that follows several characters as they uncover the secrets behind Moonlight Syndrome on Rogetsu Island. The game is currently available on Steam, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox consoles. Atmosphere. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is a cold, spacious game that's atmosphere feels like it's taking place inside a morgue or the belly of an iron ship. The sound design makes the rooms feel like they're made out of metal, and the architecture of Rogetsu Hall is supposed to be that of a hospital, but feels more like a haunted mansion, with its run-down, derelict walls cracking from the lack of maintenance and the eerie moonlight seeping in through every window. The masks which help define the game cover the walls, and there are some incredibly creepy designs with some that look like they have faded, charred skin, and it's hard to ignore them as they watch you pass by. Everything feels electrically charged, like the slightest action will set things in motion, but the soundtrack plays dissonant, tuneless tones more hauntingly empty than before, creating a feeling of divide between the environment and the character. Like the other entries, the colour palette is mostly blues, dull greys and browns, and it makes the environments feel cold and melancholy. There's a sense of sadness in the air. There's not a great deal of dread or tension, just apprehension, like it's obvious there was never going to be anything good here for you to find. One of the themes of the game is amnesia, and roaming the corridors of Rogetsu Hall and the infirmary gives you the feeling of a disturbing thing that you've forgotten that's coming back to find you. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. Since it's Fatal Frame, the main focus is on the ghost fights, and the ghosts in this entry in the series have unsettlingly piercing eyes, with their full iris being rendered with a really disturbing amount of definition, leading to a lot of ghosts looking distressed or seeming to peer into your soul with their wild stare. Thanks to this, the ghosts fights are more unsettling, but only really for specific ghosts. The disappointing thing is that so many of the less interestingly designed ghosts make more of an appearance, and in Choshiro's chapter, it's more of an annoyance than anything, since his method of defense is the spirit flashlight, which makes dealing with ghosts very easy, but having them block your way to slow you down is just a pain. Ruka's chapter has some brutal ghost encounters that can be pretty stressful, but it's mostly down to your camera upgrades over how much stress these will be. There's several scripted events that lead to more ghost fights, with some of them being downright creepy, and the game slips in a few jump scares with the ghosts appearing in random places, but it's not as effective as it has been in previous games, with some of them falling pretty flat. The game has the added feature of having you search environments for dolls to photograph, and again, the staring eyes of the dolls as their haunting visage fills the screen is incredibly creepy. The game was the first to use the slow grab for items, and from my experience it was so easy to avoid getting grabbed that I never got grabbed once during the game, which removed any fear that it may have brought. As usual for Fatal Frame, the cutscenes are mildly creepy to downright disturbing. Sound design. The music and sound effects are soaked in a deep reverb that permeates the whole game. Every door creaks and carpeted hallways, which should be relatively reverb-free, echo with an unrealistically spacious chime, like somehow you're already dead. It's ghostly. The music itself is torn between the dissonant tracks mentioned earlier, which comprise of tape hiss, crackling, whispers, banging noises, and the occasional scraping, bending, and other sounds of things like people moaning and wood creaking. The ghost fights sound downright abrasive, with some of them being like metallic objects screeching into your ears, and distorted screams which help the ghosts' encounters be yet more disturbing. The rest of the music brings back this beautiful piano over and over for enchanting but sorrowful melodies, or the almost bewitching organ that plays near the end of the game that feels like a holy event as you're ushered into the afterlife. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse doesn't feature an English voiceover, and the Japanese actors all sound immaculate to someone who doesn't really know what they're saying. Again, the sound effects are all whispery, with gentle chimes echoing through the game as you browse menus and text prompts appearing like ghosts themselves. The directional audio is great, with it still helping players identify a ghost location by sound alone, which was always very helpful. Overall, yet more great audio from a Fatal Frame game. That's 2 Harry Masons. Gore. Whilst there are some mentions of medical experiments and some bodies shown, the gore is very light since it happened a very long time before the game takes place. As a result, there's not much gore and it suits the game. That's 3 Harry Masons.
ねえ美咲、本当にここに来ればよかったのかな。写真の場所でも何も思い出せなかったし、もう帰ろう。私の言う通りにしてればいいの。まどかもあんな風になりたいの。そう、私たちを見てしまった。次は私たちの番だ。神隠しにあった5人が順番に。
Story. The story follows Ruka Minazuki, Misaki Eiso, and Choshira Kirishima, who find themselves on Rogetsu Island in the wake of a series of events they struggle to remember, returning after 10 or so years to find some understanding of their past. Ruka and Misaki are 2 of 5 girls, 2 of which are now dead, who were rescued by Choshiro, who was a private detective at the time. The game's story takes a long time to unravel, with a lot of focus shifting from bizarre medical experiments to sanatorium treatments, and finally the dark traditions and rituals of Rogetsu Island. It's a tale of sorrow and obsession that led to destruction. The story is mostly told through cutscenes, flashbacks, diary entries, and audio tapes, and there's lots of smaller things going on in the background, with lots of interesting patient history brought up, even with some characters were not that important to the regards to the overall plot, that was still given wonderfully crafted patient rooms. The diary entries sometimes drag on, revealing very little, but the right ones do a fantastic job of not only being creepy and foreshadowing, but explaining things in an unnerving way, whilst still feeling evasive, which makes reading them more interesting as they constantly feel as though they're holding something back. The medical terms used in a lot of these is unsettling, with them comparing the progression of Moonlight Syndrome to that of a flower, with budding and blossoming somehow feeling incredibly disturbing to hear when in relation to this already bizarre condition. The story is very slow, but keeps that pace throughout its 12 or so hours, introducing new chapters in the dark tale of the girls and Shoshiro until it ends, with the normal ending leaving certain characters' fates ambiguous, which can be a little disappointing. Overall, the story, whilst being very slow, is pretty fascinating to watch unfold, making the final score 4 out of 5 Harry Masons. Mask of the Lunar Eclipse is a very slow-paced game that spaces out its creepy moments and its ghost fights. The backstory and unsettling Moonlight Syndrome really do make the game memorable. Again, I'd like to remind you the whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games, and if you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. I'd like to point out that whilst I saw the effects of Moonlight Syndrome, I did not blossom and advise you don't either. There will be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. And always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.